A couple's cry for justice is gathering support and momentum in Lagos, Nigeria. Their 12-year-old daughter, Whitney Adeniran, was rushed to a health facility where she was pronounced dead. Since then, the school and the parents have been on different wavelengths as to what happened on February 9, 2023. According to Chrisland schools, Whitney slumped during the inter-house outdoor activities at the Agege Stadium in Lagos. The school has since ruled out any role they may have played leading to the death of the 12-year-old. But the parents, Michael Adeniran and Blessing Adeniran, disagree. They accuse Chrisland schools of negligence and are calling for justice. Since then, Nigerians, including celebrities, have called on authorities to look into the school that has history of failing to protect its students, two of whom were molested at different points in 2018 and 2022. Then, two school authorities denied responsibility or that the incident took place at all. Today, we will hear from the father of the deceased child. You're welcome to the square. I am Kemini Amano. Before we have our conversation on the back of this, let's speak to our correspondent, Nii Omoniyi, who is presently at the school premises to give us an update on what the situation is like today. Nii, many thanks for doing this, but talk to us about what you have gathered so far being at Chrisland's.
Thank you, Kemini, for having me. I'll start right from the inscriptions on the banner you can find right in front of the schools, which says Chrisland School celebrates 45 years of excellence inspired by God's grace. For a school celebrating 45 years, many have said it has been in the news for so many bad reasons recently. But that being said, the scenario on ground is quite still calm. Earlier today, we had family, friends, relatives, and even some parents coming here to just try to sympathize with the family of Whitney. According to the order of the Lagos State government, there's the schools are temporarily shut, but just the school. But one of the challenges people are having with it, especially people who met on ground, is that they're saying the order is a blanket order because, as you can see, this is the primary section wing of the school, and it's still very much operational. You can see the bus is taking out pupils just as academic activities is ending for the day. On the left-hand side, farther left there, is the secondary wing, which is for the secondary school where Whitney is attending. But I'm here with Ruth, one of the staff to Doctor. Earlier, I met Constance, who is a cousin to Whitney, and she also spoke about some of the things they saw when Whitney was actually, when they found Whitney. So I'll just let her do all the talking. Ruth, tell us, you mentioned that you were at the clinic, somewhat clinic as you said it. Tell us what you saw.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Ruth, and the day this incident happened, we were in the office and we were ordered to close around 3 thereabouts. So we're like, what happened? So everybody had to leave the office and go home because I'm more like a staff, a relative, because we are now, the relationship between myself and the family of the deceased is more closer compared to just staff or just a mere worker. Do you get? So when we got to Agege that day, we saw my boss' car, a particular Hilux he drives, with a casket. So we're like, oh, this is Oga's car. Let's follow it. So we traced it, myself and some other of my colleagues. We traced the casket and the car to where he parked. It was it was a mechanic village. So behind that mechanic village is where the hospital is, the so-called hospital. Meanwhile, it's not an hospital.
So what was the condition of the young girl?
It's like an immunization center. So when we got there, I saw the girl lying down on a carrier on the floor, tied already with a particular thing these medical people use in tying the vein if they want to drag out blood. Yeah. So she was already packed, like she's dead already. And as at the time I got there, my boss was just getting there too. You can imagine. So the girl already died and they already packed her wrapped in a white cloth already. So even this girl was going to leave. She wasn't given any opportunity to leave.
Just to mention, we visited the Agege Stadium earlier today, which is a place that has been leased out to many other schools for inter-house sport, which was when I think the incident happened. Another school was actually using that particular spot right now for inter-house sport. We tried locating the said clinic, but just as I said, it's very, very hard to find, extremely hard to find, and we couldn't still locate it. We're still trying. We'll still go back there to make sure we can speak with maybe doctors or medical practitioners we met at the ground. But let me just come back to the school here. Security presence is high. No issue whatsoever. Everyone is calm. Earlier today, some relatives, members of the public tried creating a blockade in front of the school so that no vehicle can go in or come out. But since when we went and came back, vehicular activities are back, and just as I showed you earlier, pupils have been allowed to move out of the school and also in.
I see. Just for clarification, not all of the school's branches are closed. You say that the secondary is closed, but the primary section is still open. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's what is agitating people here. So as I showed you earlier, this is the primary wing of the school, and just as you saw earlier, the school bus was conveying the pupils out of the school. But the secondary wing is actually closed. Meanwhile, there's no signage whatsoever, maybe from the Lagos state government, to show that this school is is temporarily shut or whatsoever. So these are some of the issues that the family friends are saying should be looked into, even as investigation is ongoing and autopsy is ongoing.
Right. Do you know if the security presence there is a norm with the school, or they're there following the the death of Whitney?
Okay. Earlier when we got here, we met about 3 security operatives, which they said they've been with the school for about 5 years. So I think the school has its own security personnel who are also police officers. But additional security personnel have been on ground since the incident. In fact, the police personnel we met on ground will say the school actually shut down their school since Friday, or before the Lagos state government even came to shut the school down. So far, it's been calm, it's been peaceful. The agitations has reduced a little, but people are still gathered at the left-hand side, the left wing of the school, as you can see them there. Some sympathizing with the family, some staff of the father of the victim, and many other people.
I see. Ani, we'll leave it here for now. Thank you so much for your work. Ni Yomoni joined us from Chrisland schools, where the school at the center of the death of a 12-year-old girl. Now, I do have some unpleasant news, and I hope that you can understand. Whitney's father has said that, he feels a bit broken at the moment, understandably so, and is unable to speak with us as scheduled. We will continue to engage the family to bring you, first-hand information on what happened to their daughter. In the meantime, let's talk to other people who we could consider stakeholders on this matter. Salahuddin Hashim is a conflict and security expert. He's joining us from Abuja, Nigeria. And Betty Abba is a women and children's rights activist. She's here in Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience and your time here on the program. I'll start with you, Betty. Betty, what have you made of this situation so far?
It's quite sad, and again, it's actually scandalous. I'm really ashamed, I would say, as a mother, a child's rights activist, as a woman. I'm ashamed on behalf of Chrisland School, the management of Chrisland School, that almost every quarter we hear very terrible scandal emanating from that school. So it speaks into one very fundamental issue. And that is that there's a fundamental issue with the administrative structure of Chrisland School. There's a fundamental question over their interests. And from what I can see so far, it does appear as if Chrisland School is basically motivated by money. It's more of a business center and not the interest of the vulnerable children, the young people that they are supposed to, that are in their care. We've had all kinds of scandal of a teacher sexually molesting a 2-year-old. We've had just a few months ago of children, the student being involved in some terrible sexual activity while on excursion in Dubai. And then this is happening. And for every single time that Chrisland School has found itself emerged in scandal, their typical perennial stance is to cover up. So if you have the interest of children, the future leaders of this country, vulnerable young people in your care, and you don't have enough child protection policy, you don't have enough, you don't even have a principle that ensures that the lives of these children are guarded, then there's a big question mark. And I also question the stand of the Lagos state government, that each time something like this comes up, their first impulse to shut down the school and then say they are going to do an investigation. And nobody hears the outcome of that investigation. So who is fooling who at the end of the day? And I believe that this is the right time for the federal government to intervene, because Chrisland School is not just under the constituency of the Lagos state government. Chrisland School is under the constituency of Nigeria. Chrisland School is under the constituency of the Federal Ministry of Education. Why would Chrisland School always go the extra mile to cover up, other than owning up? There was a mistake, we're trying to resolve it, we're trying to sort it out, we are sorry. How do you say? I listened to the heart-wrenching video of the mother today, and it's just terrible. How do you come out to say a 12-year-old who had no history whatsoever of any related illness having a cardiac arrest? Now there are insinuation, there are news coming out that she was electrocuted. What was the measure, the safety measure of Chrisland School in the course of that inter-house competition?
Yeah.
Why would you carry hundreds of children to a stadium and you don't have a standby ambulance? You don't have a standby medical personnel or even paramedical personnel, and you will not have oxygen for people that are asthmatic if they run out of breath, if they get into crisis. And then when this girl gets into crisis, the first impulse was to take her to a health center and not even a standard hospital. And this is a school where parents pay millions and millions of naira to ensure that their children are well educated and in the best of care.
Indeed. Betty, I'm going to come back to you.
So it's really just annoying. It's really annoying. And I think that this time around they should be held accountable. It's not all about people having connection and pressing the right buttons and then getting on as usual.
We'll talk about accountability. We'll talk about accountability in a moment. But let me move on to Salahuddin now. And what would you say are the security lapses you see in all of the narration of what happened, both on the side of the school and on the side of the parents? When you put it together, what are the security lapses that you see on that fateful day?
All right. Thank you very much for having me. I think it is, first of all, important to say that my heart goes out to the family of the Adenirans for their loss, and we really sympathize with the situation that has happened. First of all, is to establish that there's a thin line between safety and security. Of course, safety is what you have control over, while security is some of those external factors that actually stares you in the face of death. And obviously, you ask yourself, what were the things that the school had control over during the entire process? One of the things, some of the things Betty had mentioned, were the absence of safety infrastructure. What is the safety protocol of the school in the first place? It suggests very clearly that those protocols were entirely absent. And sometimes when we talk about violence against children, we always adduce it to violence that comes in the form of maltreatment or physical violence, forgetting that even the issues of negligence is the biggest forms of violence that you can actually look at for. And perpetrators at different instances have mastered the art of evading the negligence component of violence against children. And it is very clear that over 1 billion children between the ages of 2 and 17 globally face physical, sexual, and emotional neglect. And of course, this is just a figure that has reeled out just in the last 1 year. And no wonder that even the target of the Sustainable Development Goal look at target 60.2 and says that it's important for us to look at all forms of violence against children and begin to map them very clearly. If you map the trend of events at Chrisland, it is very crystal clear that something is fundamentally wrong. At the center of gravity is sheer irresponsibility. There's an irresponsibility component on the side of management. There's an irresponsible component on the sides of every stakeholder that had the opportunity to respond all through the value chain of that particular process. So I think it is very unfortunate that what has happened unfortunately resulted into death, and that in itself has now brought us to the conversation today. But one thing that I think needs to be given urgency in terms of response is the ability for stakeholders to be able to ensure that Chrisland this time around pays the ultimate price of responsibility and ensuring that everyone who should answer this question also come to the table. You recall what also happened during the event that happened in Dubai. You saw what happened this time around, and they come from the angle of defense. First of all, is the issue of poor communication, and I sense conspiracy in this whole situation. You took her to a health facility. The health facility that you took her to without the consent of the parent. Where is consent in all of this? At the point when incidences of crisis occur, there should be some immediate first aid, and of course, family members should be contacted. Family members were not contacted. The parent found out on their own what has happened, so which means that they fell short of safety protocol, and of course, they fell short of the duty of care. That there should be their own primary responsibility.
Right, but Salahuddin, while I'll let you finish that point, someone would argue that, you know, the first call for the parents was to make sure that the girl was receiving medical aid, and that's what they tried to do, and that's why there is a lapse between that and when they could have informed the parents of the girl, because then they were seeking medical attention for her. Will that suffice?
No, unfortunately not. At the point where crisis occur, one of the first rules is actually calling, one, for help, and two, calling those who have immediate responsibility to respond and to act. So the point is that those things should go concurrently and simultaneously. So as you speak to those who have the responsibility to take care of her medically, side by side, you should have called on the parents immediately. That also would have actually nullified that component of conspiracy. But for the mother, finding out on their own, even taking her into a medical facility that is below standard, considering the standard of the school, and of course the amount parents pay in itself also calls so many things into question. And my question is, how then would they have brought in the morning a casket to the premises, which means that potentially the lady had died hours before. So for them to, they probably brought the corpse of the lady to the venue of that entire spot.
Well, allegedly, right? Allegedly.
Yes. Oh, yes. That they must have brought her body to that, because from the testimony of the eyewitness that we saw, said that as at the time they arrived in the morning, they saw a vehicle coming already with a casket. So what happened? Did she die at Agege Stadium? Did she die before they arrived? Maybe something happened at the school premises. There were insinuations of electrocution. There were insinuations that she was going to get an ice cream, and there was a naked wire and all of that. What exactly is the investigation into some of those issues? So I think there are some forensic experts who should go into that. And the second question to ask is that the mother also alleged that the lips and the tongue of the girl were burnt. Those are also symptoms of somebody who also suffered some kind of a serious injury or being electrocuted. So dying of cardiac arrest obviously will not make your tongue and your lip to go dark. So there are quite a number of indications. And for me also, the final point is that the Nigerian Medical Association should actually put some kind of searchlight on the doctor that was on duty as at the time that
we'll come to the Salahuddin. We'll come to the actions of the hospital or the medical facility that young Whitney was sent to. However, I'd want us to take a look at the statements that the school released, and feel free to share your thoughts on it. Betty, I'll start with you on this one. The statement first says that Whitney was one of our day students who opted not to participate in the inter-house sports match for reasons we were not sure about. They claim that on the 20th of January, she was unwell and her father came to the school to pick her up. It goes on to say that it is instructive to state that Whitney slumped in public view and not under any hidden circumstances whatsoever. Our immediate response was to take advantage of proximity by identifying the nearest medical facility to take her to, where the doctor on duty administered oxygen and every first aid possible on her. Another part of the statement, which I think is really critical, is even as her family made funeral plans for an immediate burial, we differed politely and reiterated the need to establish a scientific verification of the underlying cause. And it says that it is eagerly awaiting for, an independent postmortem results of Whitney Adeniran. Betty, I come to you now. What do you think about the school's position and what is put in the statement here?
I think my view about the statement, my overall view is this also speaks to the stance of Chrisland School in every negative circumstance that has emanated from the school, which is their resort to defense. It's all about defense. It's all about coming clean. It's all about defense of their image and their business interests. This does not absolve them of blame for their lack of adequate protection. For instance, why would you gather students, hundreds of students, in a stadium for an inter-house sport, and you will not have oxygen? You will not have ambulance for a school of that status? How does that absolve them? Was it not possible if you say she slumped, maybe she was out of breath, even if she had a cardiac arrest, that if there were an oxygen nearby, could that not have revived her? And if she slumped in public view, if she was electrocuted, of course, she would slump. So that does not take away the fact that she was electrocuted. If she slumped in public view, so that's not an alibi, that's not a defense, that's not something to argue about.
And Betty,
overall stance is the fact that there was lack of adequate protection. This girl was in their care. They had a duty of care, and they did not do it adequately. And typically, the entire news, especially blogging, blog, are overwhelmed with the statement from Chrisland School. Because when things like this occur in Chrisland School, it's all about resourcing, so using media influencers, bloggers, and all of that to cover up. And how long is it going to be? Do you have the interest of these children at heart? Why should it all about the protection of your business interest? And for every single issue, cases have come out of Chrisland. It's all about blanking out the parents, not giving us adequate information.
And Betty, I just want you to also, let's also take note of the contradiction here. Between the parents' narration, the mother especially, and the school. While the school says that Whitney opted not to participate in the outdoor activities, the mother narrates that Whitney was going to school, very expectant of participating in the event, and was even making sure that her mother will be there while she was in her march past. I mean, what do you make of this bit of the statement?
It goes back to my earlier statement about defense. Remember that this is the same Chrisland School when they had this very big scandal of one of their teachers casually molesting a 2 or 3 year old. This is the same school that hired senior advocates of Nigeria, lawyers, eminent lawyers, to defend the teacher. At the end of the day, this teacher got a 60-year-old sentencing from the Lagos State government, from the Lagos State Justice Department. So it's all about defending. It's all about defense. Even if she were not participating and she went into crisis, did they not have the duty of care to ensure that she was revived, that she was okay? So the point they're trying to make is, oh, this girl was not fine. She wasn't feeling fine. So that was why she could not participate in the first place. And this is not even about participating. The allegation is that she was electrocuted. So this is not even about running and then running out of breath, participating or not. What were the protective measures that were available to Whitney? What were the protective measures that were available to other students at the time of the event? I think, I believe strongly that Chrisland School has a lot of questions to answer. And I'm trusting the Lagos State government to yield to their conscience, to their good conscience, and ensure that this is probed. Because the last time we had this sex scandal from Dubai, the school was shut down because of the public outrage, and a few weeks later they were back. And then we never got to hear about the outcome of the investigation. The same thing with Dowen College. Dowen College is back up and running. Lagos, so it starts on the stakeholders, it starts on the people, the law enforcement agencies, the stakeholders, to ensure that this is closed and that we have justice for Whitney at the end of the day.
Very well.
Lastly, that Chrisland School will search its soul and ensure that the principal reason why a school is established, which is to ensure the positive outcome for students, the goodness of students, and not just for their business, for their mercantile purposes. Schools should not be business premises. Whose images should be protected by all means. The priority should be the protection of the students. And I think this is the right time for Chrisland to have a review. If not, this may not be the last of standards that we're going to be hearing from Chrisland School, as long as their stand, their priority, their motives are not right.
Indeed. Just a last one on the statement, and this time I'm coming to you, Salahuddin. It says that even as the family was making plans for immediate burial, the school, were asking for a scientific verification of the cause of death, i.e. post-mortem examination of Whitney Adeniran. What are your thoughts about this? Because it would seem to say that the parents didn't want to know what scientifically, killed their child, but they would prefer to be sentimental about it. Your take on that?
Yeah, I think the school was only trying to call the bluff of the parent. It is called reverse psychology. There's a way you present situations like this, and obviously, your parent will make you look before the parent and before the general public as though you have nothing to hide, so that at least even if you want to check any forensics to establish what has happened, that you could go and do that. And I think it is just a way in the public view to make Chrisland look as though they were innocent of whatever that must have happened. And I think even from the statement they made, there are quite a number of contradictions. As at the time that the lady had opted out of the entire process, she must have complained of something. So at what point did you have to communicate? Communication is actually where this entire center of gravity is actually rolling around, because you didn't communicate the parents to say that your child who left home well kitted and dressed to also participate in this entire process opted out. So at what point did you communicate to the school? So for me, I think there are quite a number of situations that requires not just handling it with kid gloves. There must be some additional forensics that shows us or puts us in the direction of how to provide some kind of preventive diplomacy around this recurrence. Because, of course, I think it is also high time for the state and the school to also reevaluate their safety protocols and check again if indeed this should be a universal template that should be provided to the entire school. But the school has acted ultra vires. It is irresponsible from the side of the school to have actually taken positions of making sure that they know too well the kind of grief that the parent is undergoing. They wanted to actually come out in a manner that suggests that they were innocent, and of course, putting up all of those statements as a means of it is gone past that.
Very well.
So what we do now is for them to
we have a few minutes to go, and I want to pick your thoughts, Salahuddin, on the closure or open of the schools is really confusing. The Lagos state government had ordered that the school be closed. As you heard from our correspondent, it's only the secondary session, which I believe is where young Whitney was, but the primary section is still open. What are you looking at here? Should the closure have affected every facet of the school?
Every life matters, and I think it is important that it is very easy to be able to allude to this conversation because we were not directly affected. But of course, as stakeholders within the development world, this is indeed a pointer to suggest that a number of things are not done very correctly. I think the state government also seem to be handling this with kid gloves. We saw what happened in Dubai. It was a sheer violation. It was a nuisance. It was a clear public disgrace that actually came forward. But what happened days later, weeks later, the school was reopened, and now you are closing one section. So it is just to say that, look, we are going to make it look like allegedly this.
Well, I think we lost Salahuddin there. The connection to Salahuddin dropped. But thankfully, we have Betty here. Now, Betty, just the same point about the school closure. Do we think that the children continue to be safe in that environment?
I would say that the right thing to do was to have closed the entire branch. After all, this is not even the entire Chrisland school. There are branches in BI,
Ikeja,
Lekki, and other places. Okay, this is just the Okwebi section. And I think the whole school should have been closed, if for nothing else, but for in respect of the dead, out of respect for the dead and for the family who is deeply, deeply hurting. Again, it looks like it's going to be business as usual. They're even angry that they will have to even shut down temporarily because it will impact their profit. And this should not be so. Chrisland school should not be remembered in the annals of schools in Nigeria as one school that is purely business-oriented. They should have the interest of children and their parents and guardians in mind. But this is not what we've seen so far from Chrisland school. In fact, the other time when we had the issue of sexual molestation of the 2-year-old in the Lekki or the BI, I think the BI session, the mother of that girl was harassed. She was intimidated by the school. And that was how she actually came out, went public. She was harassed. They wanted to silence her by all means. They did not have the interest of the baby at heart. They just were interested in their image. So I think Chrisland should ensure that they put up a more humane face to the public.
So let's talk about how this could be dealt with differently in the general context of safety of children in schools in Lagos. Betty, what are some of the ways that you think that this should be handled to a conclusive end at the state level and, like you mentioned earlier, at the federal level? What should they be looking at now?
I think that the state government should do a conclusive investigation and come out publicly with their findings and ensure that Chrisland school is sanctioned. For the very fact that they do not have the right paramedics, the right instruments, medical instruments, EI, an ambulance on ground. That is one reason why they should even be sanctioned, whatever defense they put up. And so the Lagos state government should do a thorough investigation and for their image sake, for the sake of conscience, apply the right sanctions. The federal government should get in, like I said earlier, Chrisland School is not just under the constituency of the Lagos State government. They are under the constituency of the Federal Ministry of Education, under the federal government of Nigeria. They should look into this issue because this is one standard too many. This is one standard too many. And we're talking about precious life. If parents would continue to patronize the school with all the red flags, with all the standards, the government has the duty, the utmost duty to protect this young life at the state and federal level. I think they should do what is right to ensure that Chrisland School does not continue to have a few days violating the right, the fundamental right, the safety of these children, and continuing to endanger people because of their lapses and the administrative flaws that are so obvious to the public. I think the government should do what is right. Government should, because everyone is watching, and there's so much outrage. Why always Chrisland School? Can Lagos State government for once do what is right so that we don't have this? Because it's at the expense of life. People are losing their children. Young people, young lives are being lost, are being dented, and it's not right. It's
Very well.
not right.
Now, Salahuddin, my understanding is you're back on our connection. I'll ask you the same question. Chrisland schools will not be the only case that we have seen. We've seen Darwin in the past also. How do you think that authorities at the state level and at the federal level should be handling the safety of children in schools going forward so that parents can be assured that when their children are in school, there is a guaranteed level of safety for them?
Is to do an audit of the entire safety mechanisms that we have across our schools at both federal and state level. If we do that audit, it tells us to be able to now reevaluate and see whether or not we are meeting benchmarks or that we have a number of reviews to do, because what we have seen playing out very clearly are the fact that there are quite a lot of safety gaps that played out. One, you don't have paramedics on the ground. Two, there were no medical person who accompanied the children to an event where they were going to be very physical. We suggested that there were quite a number of gaps. Three, there were also no immediate first aid on site, which suggests a number of challenge with situations like that. And of course, for our public facility, how well are we also putting some of these safety infrastructures in place? So the immediate thing to do is to do an audit of the existing safety protocols across schools at all levels, and then we check, we benchmark them and see what we need to do a lot differently. But I tell you, what has happened is a fundamental flaw. It is a gap. It is something that calls for urgent response. Lagos State must not allow this to be swept under the carpet again. Otherwise, it will bring some reputational damage and integrity gap, which people begin to question to see if the state itself has the capacity and the capability to be able to allow people live within.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid that we have to end our conversation right now. But be sure that I am very grateful for your insights and your time on this subject. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Salahuddin Hashim and Betty Abad there. We've been talking about the events that have unfolded at Chrisland schools where a 12-year-old slumped and died, as the school says. But, you know, there has been more to it based on what the parents have been telling us. And to the family of Whitney Adeniran, we'll keep you in our prayers. We hope that at some point you'll be able to speak to us. Well, stay safe out there. My name is Kemini Amano. Bye-bye.